Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to CE 2021 AD of Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar is originated in the European continent. Moksha Media welcomes you to this episode of CE 2021 AD. By the way, I am Moksha Hiramat. I wish you the peace of mind in common era of 2021 after domain of Gregorian calendar. Today, I would like to share with you something about the music which is the part and parcel of a life of human being. Since time immemorial, music has become the good friend and philosopher of human history. Whatever system of music it may be, but it soothes the minds of the people. It relieves a human being of strife, strain, and stress. Therefore, in one way or another way, a person tries to have a kind of music. It may be a light music, it may be a classical music, it may be a lyrical or folklore or kirtanas or devotional songs. So in this background, I would like to say something about Carnatic music. Most of you, in one way or another way, have heard something about Carnatic music. Of course, Carnatic music has its own place in the history of music system in the world. Then where it is originated, we have to ask ourselves. Of course, before 12th century AD, it was not called as Carnatic music, but throughout India, that is on the bank of Sindhu river, it is simply called Indian classical music. That is Bharata Sangeeta. This Indian classical music has its origin in Samaveda, one of the Vedas. In Samaveda, music is used to recite and chant Vedic slokas. Some slokas should be chanted in a step by step. The pronunciation should be proper. The feeling one expressed in chanting those slokas should convey his thoughts and emotions and feelings to the persons and to the devotees and to a Lord. That is why in Samaveda, the Indian classical music has arisen and is evolved as the time goes on and on. But of course, in toto, Indian music goes without any abstraction until the 12th century of ante-domain. But in the 12th century, some changes were taken place. Due to those changes, the music was also changed, retaining its finer spirit and classical system. At the time of 12th century AD, the foreign entrance into India had begun. That foreign culture had a different sort of things, had a different thought, taste, had a different modes, and it looked at the life in a different way. Its approach was completely different. Its thoughts, its approach to life, its eating and mating system, its dress code, its pronunciation, its understanding of nature, its importance regarding the men and women, and its thought regarding the society were entirely different. But there, the Indian classical music had come in confrontation with that culture which was not based on the Indian soil, water, climate and environment. Of course, as the time goes on and on, that foreign culture is absorbed in Indian culture. That is a different story. But here, at the time of entrance of that culture into Indian territory, the Indian system had to protect its interest, had to protect its finer, nobler thoughts and culture. It had to guard its own things against that culture which was violent in nature, which was not in pursuit of peace, even though aim of it was peace. So it was entirely a different one. So in the 12th century AD, we can see in Vachanas that the Vachanakaras used Indian system of music, Indian classical system of music there. They used ragas, they used talas, they used swaras and Shrutis and etc. etc. For instance, Allama Prabhu used Shivaranjani Raga in his Vachanas. Basvanna used Kalyani Raga in his Vachanas, and Akkamadevi used Ananda Bhairavi Raga in her Vachanas. Like this, each Vachanakara used his own ragas and talas in Vachanas. The ultimate aim of those Vachanakaras was to make the people understand the life properly and to drag them towards spirituality. And by that, they tried to bridge the gap between the rich and poor, between possessed and unpossessed, between low and high, between men and women, and etc., etc., etc. But after that, the situation was different due to the attack of that culture which was different from Indian till that time. So automatically the persons were tried their best to evolve their own kind of musical system in order to protect their culture, their thoughts, their final spirits, and their understanding of God and goddesses. So at that time, all the books, all the texts, whatever it might be, whether it is a music, whether it is a literature, whether it is philosophical, sociological, spiritual, yogic, etc., etc., were in Sanskrit language. Almost all scholars at that time used Sanskrit as a scholarly language. So, in that period, we come to know a scholar. His name was Sarangadeva. He was there in Maharashtra. He was there under the reign of Yadavas. Sri Sarangadeva wrote a book on Indian classical music in which he tried to trace the evolving Indian classical music which was different from the influence of foreign culture. He clarified it in a Sanskrit work that Sangeeta Ratnamala. Of course, I think that is the first Sanskrit work which tried to differentiate the classical music between the Indian attackers and Indian protectors. So as the time and goes on and on, the severity of foreign attack was limitless, and other alternative regimes also emerged, and Vijayanagara Empire was one of them. Vijayanagara Empire stood against the foreign attack. Of course, in the Vijayanagara Empire, the fine art is supported and given a scope. Especially under the reign of Immadi Devaraya and Krishna Devaraya, the fine art was nurtured and nourished. Of course, Hukkaraya and Bukkaraya laid the foundation for Vijayanagara Empire, but Immadi Praudadevaraya, that is the Praudadevaraya the second, established Vijayanagara Empire, making some fundamental changes in the empire, and afterwards Krishnadevaraya continued what was improved and developed in another way. Of course, Krishnadevaraya ruled for 20 years. In that 20 years, he fought 60 wars. And he brought diamonds, gems, pearls, and property to the Vijayanagara Samrajya from the place he acquired. So, this made Vijayanagara Empire a richer and richer one. In addition to that, he cultivated some of the good things. He brought some of the improvements in his kingdom, especially the canal irrigation. And anyhow, that Sangama dynasty ruled for round about 180 or round about 200 years, whereas other dynasties of Vijayanagara Empire ruled for 40, 20, 60, as the case may be. But the point is that in Vijayanagara Empire, the art and the finer art gets its support. The new generation finer art is born, bred, nourished and nurtured. Of course, we know the finer arts, that is the audio visual activities, the sculpture, the architecture and painting are visual arts, whereas the literature and music are audio activities. Vijayanagara kings and queens supported these two artistic skills, that is audio visual skills. And in that period, so many literatures, so many musicians were born and brought up and nourished the arts to a climax. On the one hand, there were Vachanakaras, on the other hand, there were Dasas. Both of them were devoted to the social cause. The worship they made might be different. Different means they were Shaiva devotees and Vaishnava devotees, but that was not the matter. The matter was they fought against social injustice. And as the time goes on and on, that the Indian classical music has got its clarity. Of course, Sarangadeva, in his Sanskrit book, Sangeeta Ratnamala, traced those features. Then what are the features of that Karnataka music. In those days, it was called Karnataka Sangeeta. But as the time goes on and on, at the time of British reign, it is called as Carnatic music. I will come to that point afterwards. But anyhow, that he identified the features of Karnataka Sangeeta in his book. But he identified them, but the clarity was not that much of at that time. But when the time goes on and on, that Karnataka Sangeeta is cleared its path and faced the restriction and faced the problems and crossed the restrictions. Then what are the features of Karnataka Sangeeta or Carnatic music? That Karnataka Sangeeta, Carnatic music, Karnataka music, Southern Indian music, etc., etc. It is called by all these names. But among them, that Karnataka Sangeeta is very relevant and is very appropriate, because Karnataka region is the birthplace of that Karnataka music. As the time goes on, dasas appeared on the social scene. Of course, dasa was a sect at that time, and it was spiritual. It fought against the casteism, it fought against the social injustice and social inequality in its own way. But the intention of Dasa sect, Dasa followers, should not be questioned. So before Dasas, there were some other persons, Vachanakaras, I have already mentioned, but there are some other persons who wrote something about that Karnataka Sangeeta. Till that time, till the 15th century or 16th century, we didn't have any text regarding Karnataka Sangeeta in the language of Kannada. But round about 16th century, we have the Kannada text regarding the Karnataka Sangeeta. Of course, Shivacharyas like Nijiguna Siyogi and Annamacharya of Thalam contributed a lot to the Carnatic music. For the first time, that Nijiguna Siyogi wrote something about Karnataka Sangeetam and devoted some chapters to that Carnatic music in Kannada language. Here we can quote especially two of his works. One is Kaivalya Paddhati and another one is Viveka Chintamani in Kannada language. In these two texts, he said something about Karnataka music. So, as the time goes on and on, that Karnataka Sangeeta is differentiated from other Indian system of music completely. So, at that point or at that time, we are in a position to say it is a Karnataka music and that is a Hindustani music. Of course, these two are the musical systems of India, no doubt about it. But as far as historical things are concerned, as far as the influence they made at that time, we have to identify their influences, their role on the Indian soil. Then we have to ask ourselves these questions. What are the features of Karnataka music which Nijuna Shivoyavi identified, wrote something about them in his book Viveka Chintamani and Kaivalya Paddhati. Nijguna Shivayogi is also called Nijguna Acharya, Nijguna Aradhya, Nijguna Arya, and etc. etc. He was a scholar, a Vachanakara, a philosopher, a musician, and a Sharana. Of course, at that point we come to know the features of Karnataka music properly. Karnataka music is a system of music. It is different from Hindustani system of music. In Karnataka music, vocal plays a prominent role. In Karnataka music, compositions are very important. These compositions, that is the songs, kirtanas, are composed in order to be sung, in order to be prayed, in order to be enhanced the minds of the peace seekers. Karnataka music is a spiritual one. All the musicians who composed their songs in one way or another way have their signature or mudra at the end of a vachana, a kirtana, or a composition. For example, Purandaradasa is the signature of Purandara Vitala. Anyhow, that Karnataka music is a spiritual and it is stood for the peace of mind, calm and quietness. The Karnataka music based on 4 elements. They are Shrutis, Swaras, Ragas and Talas. Of course, Shruti is pitch of a voice. To what extent a voice can be pitched, can be varied. So this voice of a pitch of a voice is very important in any musical system. And then swaras refer to sounds, because without sound you cannot create a music. That is why swaras are very important. For the first time, that Karnataka music system has showed 7 swaras. Of course, they are there In Samaveda also, it is said when Pythagoras came to India, he carried those swaras, he introduced those swaras to the Western world. That is why there is a similarity between Western music and Indian classical music, especially Karnataka music. Anyhow, there are 7 swaras. Those 7 swaras are Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni. With the help of these swaras, we can create ragas. We can create a varieties of ragas. Of course, these swaras are again divided into 2. That is Arohana and Avarohana. That is ascendancy and descendancy level of the sound. Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni is at the ascending level. Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Ri, Sa at the descending level. In between, there are mixed swaras. In between, there are swaras which do not associate with the other swaras properly. Again, these swaras are made into 2 types. They are natural and unnatural. For example, Sa and Pa are natural swaras, are natural tones, whereas remaining 5 swaras are unnatural. In Kannada, we say Prakrut swaras and Vikruta swaras. These differentiations are there in order to understand the swaras properly. That is the only intention, but no other intention. Of course, after swaras, we come to know something about ragas. Ragas based on swaras, and there are so many ragas. Ragas are melodic. They had the melodic tune, and they are based on swaras and shrutis, whereas talas are time oriented. They are used to measure the time of a swara, of a sound, to what extent a sound, a raga, has taken a time. That talas refer to beats of the sound. They are also called matras. They measure the time, and by that we come to know how a sound is used in a particular moment of time. So like this, these 4 elements are used in Karnataka Sangeeta music, in Karnataka music system. Of course, some musicians again created some ragas. They call it as Medakartas. Medakartas consist Melakartas consist 72 ragas, and these 72 ragas are divided again into first part and second part. They are also called Sampurna ragas, complete ragas, and these first part and second part also divided again into 12 chakras, and 12 chakras are again classified into a team of 6 each. Totally there are 72 ragas. And first 36 ragas are called Janana ragas, that is they are parent ragas, and last 36 are called as Janya ragas or descendant ragas. Both of these ragas are very important, but in order to understand it, in order to study it, in order to make it, in order to carry it to the higher level, automatically we have to make these classifications. And of course, to have the complete Arohana and Avarohana and mixed swaras, etc., we should have to use these Melakartas, these Melakarta ragas. Venkatamukhi identified these Melakarta ragas. Of course, then talas. Without a tala, you cannot complete a raga. Without a raga, you cannot complete a tala. Tala and raga are mutual. They are interdependent. They are not independent. They are interdependent. They are mutual. They are existed together. But in order to get clarity ourselves, we have classified them 7 talas. And these talas, 7 talas are Aditala, Ekatala, Dhruvatala or Dvitala, Tritala, Jampak, Matya and Rupak talas. According to ragas, these talas are used, and especially this complete Arohana and Avarohana system is used in these talas and in these ragas. Of course, in Karnataka music, a song or a kirtana is composed in order to be sung. It is for vocal. Even when musical instruments are used, these songs are sung using those musical instruments. That ragas used its own musical instruments, and tala has its own musical instruments. Especially in ragas, the veene, the chitraveene, the violin, mandolin, clarinet, and saxophone and nadaswaram are used. And of course, that tambura is there. That is called tamburi in Kannada. That is also used in the background of the ragas. and that main person in Karnataka music sit in the center of the stage, in the center of the elevated stage. Others sit by his side. Especially these musical instruments are used in a concert. Various musical concerts are conducted here and there throughout the world. At that time, these musical instruments are played in competition. Of course, they are also used in practice, but it has its own limitation. And Karnataka music system has these instruments. It doesn't have tabla, it doesn't have that harmonium. But of course, later onwards, it has absorbed them. So these are the main features of Karnataka music system. Of course, that Purandara Dasa played a prominent role in developing, in shaping and developing and advancing the Karnataka music. Before that, we have Nijguna Shivayogi and Annamacharya of Talam, who showed the way to Purandara Dasa regarding the Karnataka music, because Nijguna Shivayogi and Annamacharya were seniors to Purandara Dasa. So they showed the way to Purandara Dasa, and Purandara Dasa walked on that path, and he shaped that path as a royal path, and he used that royal path to carve his own niche in the field of music. Of course, Purandara Dasa is considered as the father of Karnataka music. After 1.5 century, that Purandara Dasa is considered, is said to be as the father of Karnataka music, but not in his lifetime, not before that. It shows to what extent that Purandara Dasa contributed to the development of Karnataka music. And even after the withering away of empires, that Karnataka music is spread here and there. It has its own influence. After Vijayanagara Empire, that kingdom of Mysore, Tanjavur in Madras, in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, and Madurai, and the kingdom of Travancore continued the influence of that Karnataka music. There are a lot of musicians, especially in the 18th, 19th and 20th century, have emerged from those places. Of course, especially we come to know something about Tyagaraja, Muthuswami Dikshitar and Shyama Shastri. These three musicians are considered as the trinity of Karnataka music system. Tyagaraja composed many poems. He brought a name and fame to the Purandara Dasa Parampare, to the Purandara Dasa tradition. Muthuswami Dikshitar and Shyama Shastri did the same thing. It is said that Tyagaraja completed nearly 70,000 kirtanas, but all of them are not available. It is also said in case of Purandaradasa that he composed round about 5 lakh kirtanas, padas, suladis, etc. etc. Among 5 lakh pieces of songs, 4,75,000 were composed by Purandaradasa and other 25,000 songs were composed by his son Madhvapati Dasa. But all of them are not found nowadays. Some hundreds of them, thousands of them are found. Because at that time, we don't have that much of advanced recording system. We have got our own system, recording system, no doubt about it. But it is not that much of efficient to record these innumerable songs, kritis, kirtanas, vachanas, suladis, ugabogadis, mundigis, etc., etc. Of course, that Tyagaraja told that Purandaradasa was the father of Karnataka music. Tyagaraja was the first musician who told that Purandaradasa was the Pitamaha of Karnataka music. After that, everyone accepted it because it is the truth. Purandara created that royal path. And as the time goes on and on, so many musicians are used Karnataka music. They become fans of Karnataka music, etc., etc. Especially the land of Travancore, the land of Tanjavur, the land of Madurai, and the area around Vellore created lot of musicians. That area, that region nurtured so many Karnataka musicians. And at that time, that Vellore region was under the reign of British. So almost all musicians came from that Tanjavur at that time. That is why British called that music as a Carnatic music, as they said, Canara for Karnataka. So they said Carnatic music for Karnataka Sangeetam. From that time onwards, the word Karnataka music has become popular. So anyhow, as the time goes on and on, some changes have taken place. Of course, we can give the names of the musicians which made name and fame in Karnataka music system. For instance, Dr. Balamurali Krishna, M.S. Subbalakshmi, Veene Doreswamy Iyengar, Veene Doreswamy, and Jesudas, etc., etc., and T. Chaudhaya for violin. So, like this, we can quote innumerable names of those musicians, but here I have told some representative names of those musicians due to the time factor. Of course, that Purandara Dasa shaped a text to learn the Karnataka music, how it should be learned, what should be taught in the beginning, with what should it be ended, etc. etc. Even today, everyone who tried to learn Karnataka music follows what Purandara prescribed from that at that time. So that is why it shows to what extent that Purandara Dasa contributed to the development and advancement of Karnataka music system. Of course, there are so many other features of Karnataka music system. But I would like to share them with you in another episode. Of course, I try to convince to you the importance of Karnataka music, which is differed from Hindustani music system. It is an introductory remark regarding the Karnataka music system. Anyhow, in the next episode, I would like to say remaining things of that Karnataka music system. So, thank you and see you in the next episode. Namaskar.